My name is Tomohide Yasuda, and I'm from Massachusetts, University of Massachusetts at Boston, a Department of Environmental, Earth, and Ocean Sciences. In 1997, the most prestigious science journal, Nature, published a paper by Costanza et al. Titled The Value of the World Ecosystem Services and Natural Capital. It puts the value of the entire biosphere at $16 to $54 trillion a year. This estimate has taken a life of its own since its publication and has appeared widely in the popular media. In academia, the paper still remains one of the most cited papers in environmental and ecology studies. Well, at present, the citations are 1,257. 10 years after its publication, annual citations are still increasing. Right? The Robert Costanza, the lead author of that article at the University of Vermont, is highly cited and highly funded researcher. I will talk about that later. The content of my talk today, I will go over the article's fundamental flaws and why do we care. The article, the Science Nature article, has many flaws and dirty tricks. But I will focus on only three major problems. First, they assume value is a objective entity. But as we know, value is a subjective entity. They claim that they measure a consumer's willingness to pay for ecosystems, but what they did was actually calculating total replacement cost for these ecosystems. Right? They also commit double counting. Simply put, what they did was to calculate the costs necessary to replace these 17 ecosystem services of their choice with our current technology. Now, okay? Let me comment on the word service. Like value, service is again a subjective entity, right? I don't feel like I'm being served by the earth's soil formation. Right. As I said, they treat the value of ecosystem as an objective entity that can be measured independent of individual human action. Right? But thanks to Carl Menger, we have long known that value is a subjective entity. Value should be recognized by human beings. Right? This is a foundation of modern economics. But these authors of the article ignore this reality completely. Well, value is a subjective entity. It means an ecosystem's value depends on how much people actually pay for it. Right? And how many people pay for it, and how much these people can afford to pay. But also, an individual's valuation of an ecosystem is unique. Right? Even if I put some of my own money on some unit of an ecosystem, it doesn't mean that somebody else like you would put the same amount of money on the same thing. Right? This is a graph I took from their paper. The demand curve is sloping to the right. It means they claim they are dealing with marginal utility. But as I said, they're calculating total replacement costs for these ecosystems, right, using our current technology. So what they're actually doing, oh, by the way, they claim that they are calculating the area of these two shaded areas. But what they are actually doing is this, right? Because with our current technology, right? And we even don't know whether our current technology can replace these 17 ecosystem services. It means the red area approaches infinity. In the paper, they claim that their upper bound estimate, $54 trillion per year, is 3 times as large as global GDP. Of course, this approach is infinity. Well, what our human, our real human day-to-day economic activities are taking place in this tiny, tiny microscopic area, because this is, this graph, their graph dealing with the entire Earth. Right? So, but our activities are concerned about this. We are using now a microscope. Okay? Different colors represent different individuals and different tiny units of different ecosystems. We human beings are facing choices between tiny, tiny incremental changes to different ecosystems, right, to what we have now, right? The left side of the graph has no meaning. What does it mean if we lose half of Earth's ecosystem services? We are done for anyway. Well, also, the author, Costanda et al. Choice of these 70 ecosystem services is arbitrary and capricious, right? They claim that how much do we need to pay to replace these 70 ecosystem services? But if we are going to lose all of these, why do we have to limit ourselves to these 17 ecosystems? Why don't we include one out in the belt? Or, for example, this rotation. I'm not saying that what would happen if the Earth stopped its rotation completely, but even if the Earth slows down a little, its rotation, what would happen? Our day and night cycle will be altered, and then that would have a kind of economic impact of our life, right? And also, how about the moon? If the moon gets a little closer to the Earth, right, what would happen? Well, our tidal cycle would be dramatically changed, and of course, fisheries, would be affected, and coastal homes will be, dramatically affected by that. Why they don't include that, right? My point, you can come up with your own examples to add to this list, but my point is that they chose these 17 ecosystems on the assumption, it seems to me, on the assumption that we human beings are going to lose these 17 ecosystem services in the near future because of human activity. That's why they chose, I suspect, they chose these 17 ecosystems. But in reality, we are dealing with, as I said, tiny, tiny incremental changes to what we have at worst. Let's look at this list carefully. They commit double counting. Well, I don't really understand what's the difference between gas regulation and climate regulation. What's the difference between water regulation and water supply? Soil formation, nutrient cycling, waste treatment, they all over. Well, they also include pollination and food production. Well, but when we buy honey and different kinds of fruit and all kinds of plant products, the final prices you pay include the cost of pollination. They are committing double counting. Also, pollination causes allergies, right? Why they don't deduct that figure, Anyway, they commit double counting. This is apparently bad economics. Why do we care? Why am I singing to the choir? Why giving this talk to Professor Klein, who wrote introduction to Karl Menger's seminal work? Right? Because they are not going to leave us alone. Right? Well, these 13 authors were cited in the other most prestigious science journal, Science, saying societies need to overhaul their environmental and economic policies, for example, by taxing the loss of wetlands to avoid facing a spill of this magnitude. They want to tax us based on their estimate, exaggerated estimate. By the way, The lead author, Robert Costanza, lifetime funding, staggering $21 billion. 90% of that figure, or the amount, came from government, of course, tax. Why do we need to criticize? I know that Austrians are busy criticizing bailout and the Fed, but the journal Nature decided not to publish any follow-up to the Costanza et al. Article. It means that readers of the journal Science have not been exposed to the article's criticism. There's a lack of communication between scientists and real economists. Let me conclude my presentation with two major consequences of their political use of their exaggerated and wrong estimates. Well, if we tax people based on their wrong estimates, well, these taxes would take away resources from individuals, right, who are facing real choices in their lives, including managing their surroundings, right? And they are willing to. We are going to pay our own money to deal with a specific environmental problem, specific ecosystem on which our lives are dependent, right? And in the course of that, we will invest our money on certain specific technologies, and the technology will be developed, right? And costs to deal with some issues will be reduced in the future, right? So therefore, in the long run, as our technologies develop, the cost to deal with, even if we're losing some of these ecosystem services, the cost will be lower, right? So it's meaningless to calculate the total cost now. But anyway, if we or they gonna tax us based on their wrong estimates, these taxes will create first coercive misallocation of individual resources away from the ecosystems they really value. Second, these taxes will prevent our technological development. Thank you very much. That's it.